Welcome to Drive the Daf. Clear, structured explanation of the daily daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Yoma Daf Ayin contains one Mishnah. From the beginning of the daf until the Mishnah finishes, a discussion of the laning, the Kriyas HaTorah that the Kohen Gadol did on Yom Kippur before continuing the Avodah. It explains why he did it the way he did in a number of steps. Then we get to the Mishnah which finishes off the rest of the Avodah, including the Musafin that he needs to do, and where they were located in the Avodah, the remaining two clothing changes, and the Yom Tov that the Kohen Gadol made when he left. The Gemara afterwards will have a discussion as to what exactly is the position of the different karbanos that are part of the Musaf, where they fit into the day, be machlokes. The Gemara will give the sources for that machlokes. So let's begin. The Gemara said that after the Kohen Gadol reads the Parsha of Yom Kippur from Parshas Acharemos and from Parshas Emor, he then closes the Sefer Torah and says there's much more written here than I am telling you. The Gemara says, why does he have to say that? The Gemara says so as not to be mitzi laz on the Sefer Torah, because he's now going to read Baal Peh. He doesn't want people to think that he's now saying over something that's missing in the Sefer Torah and that it's missing a part. The Gemara says, why is he reading it Baal Peh? Why doesn't he just read it inside? What he has to read further is what it says about the Musaf Karbanos of Yom Kippur that is listed in Parshas Pinchas. So Gemara answers because he can't roll all the way to Parshas Pinchas in front of the tzibur. It's not code for the tzibur to stand around while people are busy rolling the Sefer Torah. You're not supposed to roll Sefer Torah but tzibur. It's supposed to be done beforehand. And here he had to read from Parshas Acharemos and Emor. Now to roll all the way to Pinchas is not appropriate. So Gemara says, why does he just take out a second Sefer Torah? Gemara says two reasons. Number one, it's going to be pagam to the first one. It's going to make it look like there's something wrong with the first one if you take out one and then you switch it to another one. It seems there's something wrong with the first one. And second of all, it's a bracha she'nei tzricha. It's the same person standing there is going to have to make a new bracha again if he rolls to a different. If he takes out a different Sefer Torah. It's forcing yourself to say an extra bracha, which is not allowed. So Gemara says, what do you mean? How could these things be problems? We know that we very often in shul take out multiple Sifrei Torah. On Rosh Chodesh that falls on Chanukah of Shabbos, we take out 3 Sifrei Torah. So how is this a problem? The Gemara says there is different. They're all 3 aliyahs, are 3 different people. So it's not a bracha she'nei tzricha. It's 3 different people, and there's no problem with pagam because you're taking out a different Sefer Torah for a different individual. But here it's all going to be for the same person, and therefore it's both pagam and bracha she'nei tzricha. Okay. The Gemara now discusses the tefillah that he says, and we had seen a list of 8 brachas that he says. The Gemara describes what they are. In a brisa, the brisa says, what is the bracha of al ha-Torah? That's brachas ha-Torah, like we say in shul. What's the bracha of al avodah? That's ritzei, like we say in Shemona Esrei. Haidah is meidim, like we say in Shemona Esrei. Mechilas avon is the bracha we say in Yom Kippur as part of the Shemona Esrei bracha for the day. These are all said the way that they appear in the Siddur. And then he says a bracha on the Mikdash, on Kehanim, on Yisrael. Those are all special brachas. The Gemara doesn't elaborate them. And the Gemara says, and he says, Shar Tefillah. What's Shar Tefillah? So the Gemara says, he says as follows: Tefillah Rina Tchina Bakasha Milfanach Am Chaisal Shetzrichim Lehivasha. He asks Hashem for Yeshua for a Chaisal that way, and then he ends off with a bracha Shemei Tefillah. Then the Gemara says, what happened next was that everybody takes out their own private Sefer Torah that they had brought to the Beis Hamikdash or to the shul beforehand, and they each read. And they each bring their own to show how beautiful their Sefer Torah is as part of Zeh Kelim Anveyu. Okay, referring back to the last phrase in the previous Mishnah, it had said that somebody cannot watch the burning of the Parah and Sire at the same time and also watch the laning of the Kohen Gadol. The Gemara says, what's the Chiddush in that? Obviously. The Gemara says, the Chiddush is you can go to whichever one you want, and it's not called Mavir Nala Mitzvahs. It's not called you're passing up a mitzvah. Even though it's a mitzvah to be present, it's part of Rav Hadras Melach, but since you're not actually doing it, so you're not called passing up a mitzvah if you pass by one and you go do the other one. Okay, now we're going to move on to the next Mishnah, which will introduce a complex sugya of where the rest of the karbanos of the day happen. So there are 5 steps left that need to be done that we have to discuss, and they are as follows. There's the Eloi, there's the ram, the Ayil. There's 2 Elim, at least. Perhaps there's a 3rd Ayil, but there's at least 2 Elim. Those are rams that are brought as a carbon ola. That's part of the Yom Kippur Avodah. One is for the Kohen Gadol himself, and one is for the entire congregation. It's called Eloi ve'el ha'am. Those 2 go together. The question is where they fit in. Then there are 3 parts to the carbon musaf. Machlok is whether or not there's a 4th part. The 3 parts that there certainly are 7 sheep, 7 kvasim, a par ha'ola, a cow is a korban ola, and then there's a soyer, a goat that's done outside. This is distinguished from the soyer b'fnim, it's called the soyer b'chutz. Soyer b'fnim was the korban chatas that was part of the Yom Kippur avoda. This is a regular musaf. It's called soyer chutz. Besides for that, there's also the emurim. There's also the parts of the previous soyer, the par and the soyer b'fnim. Those still have to go on the mizbech. They haven't been put on the mizbech yet. As we shall see, there's a machlokes in the end of the Gemara. Is a machlokes whether there was another ayel. The psukim in Parshas Pinchas discuss another ayel. The question is, the ayel discussed in Parshas Pinchas is part of the musaf. Is that the ayel that's referred to in Achremos, same ayel? Or is there another ayel that's part of the korban musaf? The ayel which we're discussing in Parshas Achremos is the Elei ve'el ha'am. That's a korban ola. That's part of Yom Kippur avoda, and then the musaf is extra. Besides that, there's also an ayel. Or is that the same one and there's no extra one as part of the musaf? Machlokes Rebbe and Rebbe Elazar Rebbe Shimon. Okay, so now the question is, where do you fit in these 5 things? So the Gemara, the Mishnah begins, and we have 3 divisions of the day. There are 3 parts of the day that are performed with the big days of the golden clothing. Those are the 3 parts of the day for regular clothing, regular avodas of the Beis HaMikdash. They are broken up. In between the 3, you have activities in the big day Lavan, the golden clothing. So the first set, the first third, which is done in the gold, that's the Tamid Shel Shachar, all the morning Tamidim. The last one is the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. In between, we don't know what goes there. We're going to have to discuss what fits in over there. Between the first third and the middle third is the Avodas Pnim, all the things that happen inside the Kodesh Kodashim, which we've been discussing. Between the middle third and the last third, he puts the white clothing back on, goes back into the Kodesh Kodashim, takes out the spoon and the shovel, and then changes back to his golden clothing to do the last third, the Tamid Shel Bein Harbayim. Now, like the Tamid Shel Shachar, the Tamid Shel Bein Harbayim included the korban Tamid, the Keves La'ola, the korban Tamid. It also included lighting the menorah, and it included bringing the Ketores in the afternoon. Those are all in the final third. Now the question is, where do these korban musafim go? Where does the Eil and the Eil Ha'am go? And where do the Murichatas go? Now every time he changed clothing, the Mishnah spells out he had to certainly go to the mikvah, he had to wash his hands before and after. We've seen Machokas where the washing of the hands goes. And then at the end, after he finished everything, he went to the mikvah again and changed into his home clothing. He went home and he made a yantif. So now let's focus on where the things we haven't specified, where they fit in exactly. So the Mishnah brings the machlokes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Akiva, and the Mishnah's wording is unclear, and the Gemara will bring a brisa to explain it, and it works out very differently than it seems in the Mishnah itself. So in the Mishnah, we have as follows. Rabbi Eliezer says that in the middle third, he does the Eloi and the El Ha'am and the Shiva Kvasim. The Eloi and the El Ha'am is part of the Yom Kippur Avoda, but that's done outside in the golden clothing. And the Shiva Kvasim is done then. It does not specify for us where is the Par Ha'ola, where is the Sar Bachutz, and where are the Emurei Chatas. It doesn't specify any of those things. The Mishnah introduces Rabbi Akiva's opinion. Rabbi Akiva says that the Shiva Kvasim from the Musaf were done in the first third with the korban the Tamid Shel Shachar. Then he says, and the Ola, and the Sar Bachutz, and the Par Ha'ola, and the Sar Bachutz, and he says, were brought with the afternoon Tamid in the final third. It does not specify which one. The Sar is specified is in the final third, or the Sar and the Par. The Par is with the first third, with the korban the Tamid Shel Shachar is not clear. He also doesn't say what happens to the Emurei Chatas. So the Gemara is going to specify and clarify all these. The Gemara asks, how do you fit in all these 3 things? We have 3 questions. The questions are, where did Rabbi Akiva hold that the Par Ha'ola goes? The question is, where does Rabbi Eliezer hold that the Par Ha'ola and the Sar of the Chatas, where do they go? And where does everybody hold that the Emurei Chatas go? So the Gemara therefore brings 2 brises and says this is the only way that it all works out, and the Gemara is going to get into the machlokes at length. So again, we have 3 sets of avoda wearing the gold clothing outside the Kodesh Kodashim. One is with the Tamid Shel Shachar. That's the first third. That's what we're calling the first third. The middle third is between the 2 entries into the Kodesh Kodashim. The middle third, everybody agrees to, basically. The Gemara presents two brises. Everybody agrees the middle third is the Eloi and the El Ha'am and the Emurei Chatas. Those two things go there. Rabbi Akiva adds that the Sar B'chutz goes there also. The Gemara will discuss that. Now, so that's the middle third. The first third and the last third. So the first third is again a Tamid Shel Shachris. The last third is Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim and all the other things that go along with it. So the Gemara says as follows. Rabbi Eliezer holds that all the other things from the Karban Musaf all go in the final third with the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. That's the Par HaOla, the Shevan Kvasim, and the Sar B'chutz. They all go in the last third with the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim. Rabbi Akiva says no. 2 out of the 3 go with the Tamid Shel Shachar. Par HaOla and the Shevan Kvasim go with the Tamid Shel Shachar. The Sar B'chutz is in the middle third, together with the Eloi and the El Am and the Emurei Chatas. The last third with the Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, there's nothing. So the Gemara now gets into how do you explain this order? Why is it explained this way? So the Gemara says Rabbi Akiva holds as follows. He holds that Karban Musaf always goes together with the Tamid Shel Shachar, and he brings a pasuk that says Mavad Olas Bakar Shel Olas Hatamid. In every Yom Tov, when we discuss the Karban Musaf, when the Torah lists it off, it always says this is all besides for the regular Karban Tamid of the morning. That means that it's being brought together with the Karban Tamid of the morning besides for it. And that's what it says by every Yom Tov, and that's true by the Karban Musafin of Yom Kippur as well. So the Karban Musaf is brought with the Karban Tamid Shel Shachris. However, he moves the Sar B'chutz. That's, even though it's part of the Musaf, he moves that to later. Why does he move that to later? Because when discussing the Sar B'chutz, the Torah says Soyer izim echad chatos movad chatos hakipurim. It says besides for the chatos hakipurim. So you see that the Sar B'chutz goes later than all the karbanos that were brought inside, later than the Par Kohen Gadol and the Soyer B'fnim. It's got to be, because when it says that besides those two. So therefore it has to be later. So that's moved from its normal spot as part of a Karban Musaf being together with the Karban Tamid Shel Shachris. That's moved to after the Karbanos B'fnim inside the Kodesh Kodashim. Now, that is the first thing though. Right after he finishes the Avoda inside the Kodesh Kodashim, he comes down and he does the Sar B'chutz, because that's part of the Karban Musaf really, and then he continues with the Eloi and the El Ha'am and the Emurei Chatas. And that's it. Those are all the Karbanos. Now, Rabbi Eliezer disagrees with that. He says, first of all, you don't learn from the other Yom Tovim to Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the Karbanos Musaf are not done together with the Karban and Tamid Shel Shachris, and you don't have to worry about the Sar B'chutz being right away first thing, because as a matter of fact, all 3 parts of the Karban Musaf are all done last. Why? You go in order of the Psukim. The Torah first talks about Parshas Achreimos, talks about the Yom Kippur Avoda, and therefore that you do first. Then it talks about the Eloi and the El Ha'am and the Emurei Chatas that you do second. And this is all the those two you do in the middle third, right after the special Yom Kippur Avoda. And this is all in Chumash Vayikra. And way later in Parshas Pinchas, the Chumash Bamidbar does it describe the Musaf. So that Musaf is done last. It's done after everything with the Karban Tamid Shel Bein Arbayim, and you have no problems as to where you split it up and how you fit it in. It's all done in the final set of things. Asks the Gemara, what does Rabbi Eliezer do with the pasuk of Mavad Chatas HaKippurim? The pasuk that says that the Sar B'chutz is besides for the Soyer B'fnim. How does that fit in if that's not coming to teach you that the Sar B'chutz is supposed to be right afterwards? Or says that's teaching you something else. That's teaching you that besides for the fact that the Sar B'fnim is mechaper and brings kapara, the Sar B'chutz is also mechaper. What are the two things mechaper for? So Rashi explains that it depends on when he knew that they're both mechaper for an Isser done b'shogeg. The question is when did he know about it? Did he never know about it? Did he know about it and then forget about it? Those are the 2 different types of kabara, but it's for the same averos. Okay, now the Gemara brings 2 more opinions within Rabbi Akiva. The Gemara says that there are 2 opinions, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Elazar ben Reb Shimon, who say that Rabbi Akiva actually holds that the 7 kvasim are split up. Rabbi Yehuda says it's split up 6 and it's split up 1 and 6. 1 of the 7 is performed with the morning Karban Tamid, and 6 of them are done with the afternoon Karban Tamid. And Rabbi Elazar ben Shimon says the opposite. It's 6 and 1. 6 with the morning and 1 in the afternoon. What's the B'chak is about? So the Gemara says they both agree that you have to split it up because there's 2 conflicting psukim. One says Movad Olas Boker, that it should be done in the morning besides for the carbon tamid in the morning. And one says v'yatziv asas ola, so when he comes out of the Kodesh Kodashim, he does the ola, and that's referring to the musaf, the 7 kvasim. So Gemara says that it has to be split. The question is how to split it. So Rabbi Yehuda says first do one, and then go right away to the Yom Kippur Avoda, because you don't want the Kohen Gadol to become weak from doing too many and then not be able to have strength to do the Yom Kippur Avoda. Rabbi Eliezer ben Shimon says no, better off he should do 6 right away, because Yom Kippur Avoda he'll have zrizis for. That he's all excited about. But if by the time you get to after the Yom Kippur Avoda and you say he should do 6 now, then he's gonna have less strength, and he'll just forget about it, and he'll say, okay, forget it. It'll be the anticlimax of the day. Therefore, we want him to do as many as he can beforehand, not after. So now the Gemara says everybody agrees that there is only one aisle. He only brings one aisle. It doesn't have a separate aisle as part of the carbon musaf. That's actually a machlokes, like we mentioned earlier. It's a machlokes Rebbe, who says that there is only one aisle that he brings for himself. There's only one aisle, which is the carbon musaf, because the one mentioned in Parashat Pinchas is the same one in Parashas Achrim. But Rabbi Shimon says no, it's 2 separate elim. So Gemara says, what's the reason behind the machlokes? Gemara says it's behind the word echad. It says aisle echad. So Rebbe says there's only one because it says echad. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Shimon says no, there are 2. And the reason why it says echad is to show that you should bring the miyuchad. You should bring the best one that you have. The Gemara says, how does Rebbe know that? The Gemara says because that's from the words mivchar nidarecha. You always have to bring always the best ones. Rabbi Shimon says mivchar nidarecha is talking about a voluntary donated carbon, and here we're talking about an obligatory carbon. And you need to have a pasuk to tell me that the voluntary carbon and an obligatory carbon both are supposed to be brought from the best things you have. I would have logical reason to assume one and not the other. I could hear a logic that something you have to bring, you should bring the best one, and I could hear a logic that if you're going to volunteer and bring something, you should bring the best one. As the Gemara has gone through this back and forth earlier in the...
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.